Hi, and hello. I'd like to welcome everyone to MDE's Accelerated Learning Fall Webinar Series. My name is Beth Hale, and I'm from my MTSS TA Center. And today, Dr. Owen-Rogers and Mike Vallier will be presenting Accelerating Math Learning with Targeted Supports. They will be telling you more about themselves as they start their presentation. Their PowerPoint is available on the website already. I gave instructions in the chat. And there will be a recording afterwards available to come back to. I'll be monitoring the chat and sending your questions to them. They will try to answer some along the way and are planning to save the last 10 minutes for a Q&A. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to Diane and Mike.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Diane Owen-Rogers, and I am a MySTEM Regional Director for the Southwest region. As a former math consultant at Kalamazoo RISA, I attended 2 of the 4-day courses offered by Math Recovery. This experience demonstrated to me the power of math recovery methods and approaches to support quality math instruction. Part of my dissertation research focused on formative assessment, and because of that lens, I see the power of formative assessment as central to the work of math recovery.
Thank you, Diane and Beth, and I am Mike Vallier. Hello, folks, and thank you for being here. I am a math consultant for Kalamazoo RISA, and I'm also one of many math recovery course facilitators in the state. I attended my first math recovery course more than 10 years ago, and I knew right away that this content was something that was going to help me be a better math teacher. So this is our agenda that we're going to go through today. We did save some time at the end to answer questions, as Beth said. My goal is to present to you a clear picture of what I went to math recovery means and what are hopefully the long-term goals of engaging in this kind of work. First thing I want to do is clarify a little bit of language. I don't work for math recovery, but I do use the word we when I should say they. A lot of people refer to the council, which is the U.S. Math Recovery Council. For our purposes in this webinar, I'm referring to the same organization and the same group of people the entire time, whether I say they or we or me or them. So Math Recovery is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. Their belief is that the quality of the education system can't exceed the quality of its teachers. The way that we impact the lives of students is by developing the capacity and math content knowledge of our teachers. Ultimately, this is what leads to students who see themselves as mathematicians. Doing math recovery work means focusing on student thinking and problem solving. So math recovery also helps develop the capacity of our local leadership to run its own professional development, create its own system, and see lasting impact. So you may have heard a few things about math recovery before, maybe you haven't, but it's important to talk about what it is and what it isn't. It isn't a hands-on program that you have to try and fit into your day. It's also not a boxed program or some scripted intervention system, and it's not a curriculum. Math recovery is professional learning for math teachers that focuses on students' mathematical thinking. You get this through a series of professional development courses that address student thinking in math in any type of instructional setting. It's curriculum agnostic, so you use the resources you already have in purposeful ways. We help teachers get the most out of whatever curriculum has been adopted, and when it's implemented in a systemic approach, math recovery is proven to be transformative across diverse settings. We'll talk about those in a little bit today also. I think it's important to point out that math recovery as professional learning is very different from most other PD offerings. I've never been to something like it before, and the difference is in what it focuses on. These courses are founded in decades of research, so I'm going to take you back to your college days here by throwing some names at you as I describe this history. First, I'm sure we remember Piaget and Vygotsky, both psychologists who studied cognitive development. Later came Ernst von Glasersfeld. You may or may not have heard of him, but he built off of their studies and developed a theory of constructivism specifically for learning mathematics. Next was Les Steffi, somebody that we may have heard of more recently. He's a distinguished research professor. He joined Ernst von Glasersfeld at the University of Georgia. Together, they began studying the ways that children constructed their own mathematical knowledge. This was relatively new. It was a new way of looking at math instruction because It focused on the natural development inside a child's mind rather than thinking about a sequential order of math concepts that students had to learn first, second, and third. So Steffi developed these models describing how children constructed math knowledge, and he pioneered these new teaching experiments and video methodology in that research. Finally, there's Dr. Bob Wright. He was a doctoral student under Les Steffi, and he conducted a lot of this research with him. So when Wright completed his doctoral work with Steffi, he returned to Australia, his homeland, continued his own work in this area, and he developed what became known as math recovery. And then that was later brought back to the United States as the U.S. Math Recovery Council in 1995. So this research is what I'm talking about when I say that student thinking is at the heart of math recovery work. In every professional learning course that math recovery offers, the focus is on student thinking, and that's where the research came from in all of this. And I know I still haven't explained what it is. So math recovery is three big things. It is professional learning for teachers about how children learn math. That's the biggest part of this. If I only had a couple of minutes, I would say that with the knowledge you get in these math recovery courses, you can answer several different questions like, why did my student do that? How should I teach this concept? What do I do if they don't get it? Questions that we don't just automatically have. Along with that are these pedagogical tools that the teacher could use, like diagnostic assessments, learning trajectories, very specific instructional tasks. Diagnostic assessments can be used to clarify a child's thinking and strategy with a particular concept, such as addition and subtraction. The learning trajectories then describe that development, and the instructional tasks are available for teachers to draw from as they support students' development of complex mathematical concepts. So the decades of research that I just mentioned is focused on just that topic. How do students think about number? What's the typical progression that kids experience as they go from not knowing something to knowing something? And what can I do to support that progress? If, as the teacher, I understand that typical progression and I can recognize the different characteristics when I see them, then I can present more beneficial learning tasks, ask better questions, provide the right scaffolding, and offer the right kind of feedback so my students can build strong mathematical knowledge for themselves. It's empowering to feel that you can teach math to any student using any curriculum.
So the Math Recovery website offers a couple of white papers that will allow you to dig more deeply into their efficacy and effectiveness evaluations and their design research underpinnings. But I just wanted to highlight a few details for you. In 2015-16 school year, a project funded by the Michigan Math and Science Partnership found that when teachers attended AVMR 1 and AVMR 2, they are better able to support student growth. In this project, 76% of K-5 students met or exceeded their projected NWA growth scores. The project also noted an overall improvement in the mean percentile ranking of each grade level, K-5, from fall to spring. As we have said, these courses are professional learning for the teacher first. The study also showed improvement in teacher instructional decision-making and increased engagement in professional conversations related to math recovery courses. This is an important data point for administrators who want to see that their professional development investments will last. Our evaluation evidence shows the best results are achieved when there is a systemic implementation. This is pretty typical of any endeavor. Results are better when everyone is on board. Attending a course could be a one and done situation, and we've all experienced those. It may not be possible in your school right now, but we do offer opportunities to develop classroom, interventionist, and leadership components, all for your school-wide or district-wide math recovery system. This truly means involving your administration and developing a long-term vision. We will provide you with contact information at the end of the session for any next steps you might be interested in taking to connect with this important work.
So what does it mean to go to math recovery? Well, math recovery professional development includes three types of courses. There's the math recovery specialist, the Advantage MR, it's also called AVMR, that's what you would commonly hear, and the Math Recovery Leadership courses. We'll start with the Math Recovery Specialist courses. These are the most intense courses, are the specialist courses. These courses dig the deepest into the original research about how children develop math knowledge. During the course, participants develop the highest level of expertise in math recovery research and principles, and their focus is on Tier 3 and Tier 2 instruction and intervention. These courses are intended for intervention teachers, instructional coaches, or other leaders who are directly supporting math instruction and expect to find themselves problem solving with teachers about how to advance their students' thinking. Also, participants that would like to become course facilitators will go through these courses as well, because in order to lead these courses, you want to have that level of expertise in these areas. There's 2 specialist courses, MRSP 1, Math Recovery Specialist Part 1, Early Intensive Intervention, think grades K through 2, and MRSP 2, Intermediate Grade Intensive Intervention, think grades 2 through 5. But keep in mind, these grade bands are approximate because the work is focused on student thinking, which I've been saying over and over again. It's not on pacing guides and student ages. It's on student thinking. When I participated in the MRSP 1 course, I was a 5th grade teacher, and it was perfectly appropriate for some of my students. So the course components include everything participants will use to complete the course and everything they need to work with students. Specialist participants will engage in face-to-face and virtual settings throughout the course. They also work with students as part of the course. That's where the deepest, the most meaningful learning happens. That's where you try things out. You talk with your instructor and you try things out again. You really learn what it means to dig into student thinking and then make instructional decisions based on what you're seeing. AVMR, which I said is the acronym we use for Advantage Math Recovery, is built from the same research, uses the same learning trajectories and assessment models, but it's focused on Tier 1 and 2 instruction. This is traditionally pitched at classroom teachers, but in reality, these courses are for anyone who's involved in a student's math education while they're at school. Since it's built from the same research and uses the same learning trajectories, math recovery specialists from the previous slide and AVMR teachers can have deep discussions about math teaching and learning because they're both speaking the same language. If you can imagine a child study meeting where 2nd grade teacher, paraprofessional, English language teacher, interventionist, and assistant principal, they all understand a student's thinking strategy for, say, adding and subtracting. They all understand what advancing student thinking looks like in that area. That's a system that's going to have an impact on that student learning and all the other students in that system. So there's 3 AVMR courses available. These are less intense than the specialist courses, but they're equally rigorous in content pedagogy. AVMR 1 is early numeracy, which focuses on addition and subtraction tasks, as well as structuring and number words and numerals. It's kind of parallel to the specialist part 1 that we talked about. AVMR 2 extends that content, but then it also adds into it multiplication and division, as well as conceptual place value. And then there's AVMR fractions, and that's exactly what it sounds like. So each of these is a standalone course, but they blend together beautifully, again, because they come from common research. They're based on common principles. Each course contains developmental models, assessments, instructional resources, and learning trajectories, just like the specialist courses do. And remember, this is not an add-on to or a curriculum. It's not a scripted intervention set. There's nothing in there that's going to say, if the student does this, then you should do that. It's professional knowledge of the highest kind, and it's guidance to help you decide how to use it.
Mike, I just want to add in that one participant had a question about AVMR course 1 and 2 in relationship to the specialist. So in order to take those specialist courses, you do need to take AVMR 1 and 2 as foundational knowledge to go to the specialist.
That's correct. There are some prerequisites in order to go into from one course to another. Now, You don't need to go through the AVMR courses in order to attend the specialist courses, but I've seen participants that have and that have not, and it's definitely more helpful to have already done the AVMR courses. You need to go through AVMR 1 before you can go into AVMR 2, though. So there is a little bit of prerequisite there. Thank you for that question. So we're going to watch a video clip here. This clip provides a glimpse of what AVMR instruction looks like being implemented in a school that's implementing cognitively guided instruction. So while you're watching, keep in mind that for each student that you see, that activity was selected because it's at just the right point in that student's development to support advancing their thinking. This is a differentiated classroom in the purest way. And I want you to think back when we talked about the research, using video. So video is a major component of the learning experiences for course participants. We learn by watching children engage in math tasks. Sometimes we do it by actually working with children. Sometimes we do it by watching children work with stuff, with tasks, and we do that through video.
This student is one of the students from this classroom. She is progressing in her use of direct modeling strategies for join and separate result unknown problems. Applying the Math Recovery Learning Framework and number, the teacher also identifies that she knows her forward number word sequences to 100, backward number word sequences from 10 to 1, and accurately counts collections of items to 20 when all items are visible. In this lesson sequence, student partners are engaged in a Red Book activity providing practice applying strategies for 9+. Groups have access to manipulatives to support strategy development. 2 color counters are chosen to support some groups needing practice joining 2 collections and accurately naming the quantity in the collection. 13, 14, 15. This small group is engaged in conceptual place value work, incrementing and decrementing by tens. Applying intentional teacher moves to distance the setting will promote the student's transition from seeing all items, or perceptual, to figurative, where the children are able to apply counting strategies without seeing all items. Another small group of students are discussing a join change unknown problem using number choices in the 2-digit range. Students in this group are routinely using derived known facts for addition and subtraction in the range to 20 and apply conceptual place value understanding, including incrementing and decrementing by tens on and off the decade. All students in the classroom are actively doing mathematics and engaging in mathematical tasks for student success.
Math. Yeah, I think I like doing math.
I love that quote at the end. I think I like doing math. One of the things that's really great when you get involved in this kind of work with students is that it doesn't always feel like they're doing math in the traditional sense, because it doesn't necessarily always have to look like writing numbers on the paper. Some of those look like games, but in all of them, there is this building the concept and providing students with opportunities to construct the knowledge for themselves. And when they construct the knowledge for themselves, that's when it's going to mean something that's going to last for them.
So there are very few programs or approaches out there that provide supports across all 3 tiers of tier 1, 2, and 3. Most math curriculum are focused on tier 1 and leave any tier 2 and 3 supports up to the teacher. This creates a misaligned or chaotic math support system. In our experience, math recovery can be a unifying system that enhances tier 1 in support of your current curriculum, and then adds a system for tier 2 and tier 3 instruction or intervention. This creates a stronger system across all 3 tiers as educators develop a toolkit to approach quality math instruction. Educators carry with them diagnostic skills as well as instructional activities that apply across tiers as teachers seek to support students' development of mathematical understanding. As you can see on the slide, common assessments, common expectations, common vocabulary, common professional learning, all empowers teachers to have the efficacy to support students. As we said earlier, results are better when everyone is on board. By eventually developing people in all three types of courses, a school or district can reshape the system of math instruction. Again, imagine that child study meeting, or any conversation for that matter, where mathematics is the topic. The more common understanding and mutual foundation of research your staff are working from, the better the work will flow and the more empowered your teachers will feel.
So the third type of course in this area is in the area of leadership. People who can support the specialists and AVMR teachers because they have the same level of expertise and because they're positioned to drive the system if needed. Those leaders are the course facilitators. So there's a lot of ways that you could attend a math recovery course. You could attend a course sponsored by the council, or one that's offered by your local RISA or ISD, or you could become a course facilitator yourself and you can build the system from within. There are two types of course facilitators. Those who facilitate the AVMR courses are called AVMR Champions. Those who facilitate the specialist courses are called Math Recovery Leaders. If you've never met a champion or leader, you don't know this, but if you have, then you know math recovery is not something that they can simply turn off. Math recovery research and developmental terminology is embedded in nearly every conversation that we have. It's one of the reasons that we call them champions. These are people that want to connect teachers to research and help them open doors for every student. So they don't just facilitate courses. AVMR Champions and Math Recovery Leaders are habitual supporters of math teachers. Every one of them I have ever met will stop what they're doing to talk about math and math instruction. It's just part of who we are. Sometimes it's a little obnoxious, I think. And I'm one of them, all honesty. So all of our courses have these components which support consistency in language and ideas across the course. Each diagnostic interview assessment pairs with a learning trajectory, and these trajectories describe current understanding and identify the next likely learning. The book covers you see correspond with each of the courses offered. Participants also receive a kit, which includes assessment tools, data collection tools, planning and instructional tools and materials. So I've been talking about these learning trajectories. We're going to take a closer look at some of them now. The learning framework in Number for the Classroom is a holistic diagram showing how all of the research strands used in the math recovery courses fit together. This overarching framework connects all the courses. So if we take a closer look at these two strands, we can see how, for example, number words and numerals is actually split into two pathways, number word sequences and numerals, which each have their own developmental pathway. The same with addition and subtraction to 20. You can see how it's further separated into pathways with their own learning trajectories. There's addition and subtraction to 100, counting in ones, tens, and hundreds. This is one of the research-based developmental pathways. And each of these pathways connects to a model describing different levels. So participants will learn things like, what does a student in zone B do with tens and ones? And how is level 2 different from level 3? And as part of the course, participants learn how to use diagnostic tools to understand a student's mathematical thinking and locate that along these learning trajectories. They also learn how to use instructional tools and from those from the course and in their own core curriculum to support that student moving forward to more advanced levels. Our diagnostic tools help us pinpoint that student understanding. Here's the first pages of the fraction concepts assessment. These assessments are given in an interview format. So a student has the gift of time to think and share their reasoning, and so the teacher can give the student the focus they deserve. This may seem like an overwhelming task, but keep in mind that the assessments are one of the student's tools that they may choose to use from time to time as needed to get a more clear picture of one student's way of thinking about a specific area. This isn't something to make your curriculum more cumbersome by adding a bunch of tests that you have to give to every student. That's not the intention. These are available if you have a question about how a particular student, in this case, thinks about some fraction concepts. You'll sit down and do this interview with that one student and then move on from there. But you would not assess your entire class, because that's not the intention of it. This is a section of the conceptual place value model. It describes how students typically deal with collections of things that are grouped in tens and ones and hundreds and eventually thousands. Initially, students begin developing concepts of jump and split strategies in the context of materials to support their thinking. Through careful choreography of learning experiences, teachers intentionally remove the scaffolding provided by the materials until students develop robust mental calculation strategies that they can successfully employ in the absence of materials. We're going to show you an example of simple but purposeful teaching procedures designed to engender that development in this next video clip. Math Recovery Professional Development helps teachers understand the critical components needed to develop strong numeracy in all students, as well as the teacher moves needed for student success. Much of the teaching makes use of common materials. The difference is helping teachers understand how to implement the teaching for the greatest impact and acceleration of learning. So as you watch this clip of an intervention group, notice the progression of tasks, the materials, and how the teacher provides scaffolds as needed to ensure student success.
So I'm going to use this if we need it. If you need it, it's right here. So let's start with this. How many do we have?
30.
Total? 13. All right, so we have 13 under here.
23.
Rosie, that's right, 23. Isabella,
33. 43. 53. 63.
Right? You can see it here. We're jumping.
73.
What was it again, Hank?
73.
It's not 73. Say the actual number.
73.
There you go. Otherwise, I will really
83.
confuse you. Yes?
93.
Delilah.
103.
Rosie.
113.
Good. Then we can start over, right? Because here's 113. We say 123, 133, and so on. We'll stop at 113. Okay? So in here are 113. If I take away a 10, how many are left?
103. 103.
103. Next. What would be next? We took another 10, which would be under here, right? That's what it would be. Now, I'm going to give you a piece of paper that looks like this.
I know.
This is a number ladder. And here's what you're going to do. Notice the lines on here. It's a long ladder. And what you're going to do is write down some of the 10s that we've been focusing on. So you're not going to start with 0 and do 10, 20, 30. Okay, I'm going to give you the starting number. All right? Rosie, you're going to start with 9. You're going to start at the bottom. We're going to start at the bottom. We're going to build our ladder up. Okay? So you're going to start with 9, so put 9 right here, and then wait. You're going to start with 2, and you're going to start with 7. Just for something.
I got the highest one.
Now, you're going to add 10 more. So what would be 10 more? You're going to put on the line right above here. Add 10 more. So think, what's 10 plus my number? Now you're going to add 20 more, 30 more, 40 more, 50 more. What's 10 plus 2? 12. Put 12 right here. You keep going as high as you can. Then numbers that you add 10 more, 10 more, 10 more.
Right, tablet right here.
Yes, please. Put a squeeze in there. Yes, there's a tape.
And this?
Think about what's 12, right? If I had 12 plus 10 more, how many would I have?
Oh, like 2?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Oh, keep going. What would come next?
Then,
Okay, so now read that to me starting here. Now what would this one be?
19, 29, 39, 49, 59, 61, 69, 79.
In this video, we saw the teacher begin with materials and then link to a number chart. And then we fast forward to an individual check for understanding with this number ladder. The student in the middle needed a little more support, so the teacher brought out the materials again. One of the key ideas we're accomplishing with instruction is to support students making connections with the conceptual and quantitative aspects of number to the symbolic representation. And you can see how this teacher uses their knowledge of student learning trajectories to make that on-the-fly adjustment for each student based on what she was seeing and what she was hearing. An overarching idea for instruction is the teaching and learning cycle. This is nothing new to teachers. This approach to instruction is connected to our 9 guiding principles of instruction, which is central to math recovery teaching. We use this approach in all tiers of assessment and instruction. The teaching and learning cycle describes a process of making instructional decisions. And with math recovery content, we help teachers develop the skills to apply this cycle on a macro level, thinking in short-term and long-term goals, but they also apply this on a micro level, where they're constantly engaging in these questions and making instructional adjustments. The GELN, Early Math Essentials Instructional Practice, number 4, asks teachers to engage in formative assessment as a process. For math recovery, this is called observing the child and fine-tuning instruction. The teaching and learning cycle and the guiding principles of instruction help empower educators to put the right educational setting in front of the right students at the right moment in time to ensure student growth and success. These principles keep us focused on students' individual strengths and in supporting growth in their mathematical abilities, as well as their mathematical identities. So if you're like me, you wonder, where's this been for so long? A participant in the very first AVMR course that I facilitated said, why am I just now learning all of this? And the answer, the first Math Recovery Conference happened in 1997, which isn't too long ago, but there's been a recent jump in some areas around the country, specifically in the state of Michigan, where just a lot more people are all of a sudden attending courses and we're hearing more and more about it. But there have been some larger initiatives around the country.
So one of those initiatives is this Fairfax County Public Schools story. So there are many sites across the country that have worked to implement math recovery as a system of supports for students. In this one example of Fairfax County Public Schools, they started an implementation program in 2007 by first training teachers in those AVMR courses. They followed that up by having some of their AVMR participants continue on to attend the specialist course and then the champion or leader course. Now they are positioned to expand because they have educators at all levels of the organization involved in math recovery courses. As you can see, several other states or regions have partnerships with math recovery. For example, Massachusetts, Kentucky, and Albuquerque all have longstanding partnerships with the Math Recovery Council. A little closer to home, the MySTEM network has partnered with Math Recovery to impact K-5 instruction. Regional cohorts have received professional learning through both math recovery courses as well as instructional coaching and our professional learning networks. We are currently working to expand our partnership. The MySTEM network envisions mathematics as the language of STEM. This language development starts early. Therefore, we know we must support pre-K 5 students to develop facility with mathematical language so they can access STEM courses or access STEM coursework in secondary grades as they prepare for STEM careers. And I do just want to add one other aspect of this. Not only is it important for in-service teachers to connect to these AVMR courses, but we're also working with pre-service mathematics education professors. Just like Mike was saying, he and I are both upset that we didn't know about math recovery earlier in our careers. And so the more that we can integrate some of this math recovery content into even pre-service, or let pre-service teachers know that they need to partner with the MySTEM network or other ISDs or RISAs to get this kind of training early on, the stronger our teaching will be in those K-5 classrooms.
So the number of course facilitators, known as NVMR Champions or Math Recovery Leaders, has been growing in recent years. The counties in yellow on this map represent places where you can find a course facilitator. Maybe it's a local within one school district. It might be countywide. It might be somebody regional. This map is being updated all the time. Our goal, obviously, is to fill in the rest of this map. So there might be people in some of the not yellow spaces of this map that we just haven't found out about. And we're trying to network and find everybody right now. But our goal is to reach every teacher, make it available to every math teacher in the state that we possibly can make it available to. So if you're ready to make contact with someone, start talking about how to bring math recovery into your schools, you have a few different options. Your ISD or RISA may have a champion or a leader who's able to offer courses. They might have a course open for registration right now. So that would be the first place to look so you don't miss a registration deadline. I'd also ask teachers in your building or in your district. There is a chance with so much teacher movement that you have one or two that attended a course when they worked in another district somewhere and they just haven't mentioned it yet. They might know a local champion. Check with your MySTEM regional director. And you can see the website right there. You can find out who it is. The council and MySTEM, as Diane said, have been developing a really strong relationship over the past couple of years. So your regional director may have the inside scoop on math recovery in your region. And you can also go directly to the Math Recovery webpage and look for courses, and you can narrow it down, just to the state of Michigan. You can search for exactly the course you want, if it's AVMR 1 or it's MRSP 1. You can narrow it down by dates. There's also virtual courses available. So, with that being offered now, there's an opportunity for teachers to attend courses that weren't an option before. So the only thing I haven't talked about yet is the cost, and that's because it's hard to answer now, but I'll go over it briefly and with this caveat. Like I showed throughout all of this, these are intensive courses. The AVMR courses equate to 4 full days if you go face-to-face of professional development, and the specialist courses are a year-long commitment. So, it's obviously not a free course. As a facilitator of these courses, I'm always looking for grant opportunities or some other funding so I can offer these to my area school districts for a reduced rate. Some schools that we work with write AVMR PD right into their PD budget. So they just have it laid out that that's what they're going to invest in. But the council recently updated their pricing structure. So it isn't one flat fee the way it used to be. Their prices are structured based on the number of participants. Obviously, the more you have, the less cost per person. But there's even better savings if you have an in-district champion. And here's what that means. For the state of Michigan, in Kalamazoo County, I am an in-district champion for any participant within my county. So I can offer my courses at a much more reduced rate than if those participants were to get the course directly through the council, because they've got an in-district trainer that they can go to. So if you're a district that is thinking about this larger systemic implementation, sending someone through the process of becoming a champion or a leader, that's going to end up saving your district a lot of money in the long run, because just of the pricing structure, being able to not have to pay those out of district type of fees. But to find out the pricing for your school's particular situation, you have to go to mathrecovery.org to figure out exactly what that is. So we're getting close to the end of this here, and I want to make sure that I explain a couple of things, because I think we went quickly over this a little bit. A typical progression in going through these courses, what seems to happen a lot, is a participant goes into AVMR 1. That's kind of, I'm not going to call it the introductory course, but it's typically the first course. You learn so much of the principles and just the foundation of math recovery. And that's where everybody gets all of the, where was this before? This is great research. I need more. And then they go into the AVMR 2 and they go, wow, now I've got this full suite of research and assessments and tasks and everything. And from there, you get a slightly smaller group of teachers that say, I want to take this to the next level and go into the it used to be called intervention specialist, but it's the specialist courses. And then they'll some of them will go on and go through the specialist courses. And if you've gone through AVMR 1 and AVMR 2 and a specialist course, the next thing is to take an AVMR champion course, and then you're a trainer and you can train the AVMR courses. That's kind of a typical progression that people go through. Some people will just say, I just want to be the specialist and I'm just going to go through this year-long course and I'm not going to do the other stuff. And that's fine as well. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. But if your goals are, I'm going to be a math recovery teacher, then there's kind of this pathway. If your goals are, I'm going to be a district leader, then there's this pathway. And if your goals are, I'm going to be a specialist, then so there's a few different ways to plan it out. So that's where my suggestions are. Talk to either, if you have, if you have a local champion or leader, or you can contact Math Recovery. You can certainly send your questions to us about that as well. But so that's the overview of Math Recovery. We have plenty of time for questions. And I want to first say thanks for your time and your interest. Hopefully I see some of you in some of these courses. But Diane, do we have some questions?
I'm not seeing any yet. So Beth, you can let us know if there are some questions that we should be addressing. I do want to just add a couple of things from the MySTEM partnership with the Math Recovery. There have been quite a bit of advisory council grants that have supported Math Recovery work for the last several years. There were some math and science partnership grants prior to that federal funding does not exist anymore. And so it's exciting that we have this partnership between the MySTEM network and Math Recovery Council to continue some of that work. And one of the exciting things that we're working on is it's bridging into that pre-K level. And so there's going to be some more work coming out over the next year or two, but really connecting pre-K to the K2 environment, because so many times we operate in those silos. And so we want to really break those down and think about that pre-K to 5 system. And so we see this Math Recovery work as part of that development across the state. We did talk about the pre-service teacher connection as well, and then thinking about in-service teachers. And there's those multiple points that Mike was talking about, that there's opportunities for classroom teachers to enter, for those interventionists, and then people who are wanting to be in leadership to kind of grow, so to speak, a pipeline. And so one of the things from a MySTEM network perspective is we're trying to connect those regions so that if you don't have somebody literally in your backyard that is a leader or a facilitator of some sort, we could connect those regions across the state. So people from the UP can interact with people in Southwest Michigan and all over the state. And so that's part of why we're pointing you towards those MySTEM regional directors. There are 16 of them across the state, and there are 16 different regions. And so we really encourage you to check in with that person, because they can connect you with the resources that are there available locally in your region, but also across the state, so that there can be some connections there. I'm thinking too, Mike, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you've seen the difference between folks who just attend a 4-day course, and then when they get some coaching supports, and how those two things, you see some interplay in there.
Yeah, that's an interesting question as well. So the one thing that as anybody who offers a PD course, you don't want someone to walk away at the end of it and just throw the stuff on their shelf and leave it. So, we know follow-up coaching is super important. One of the things that Math Recovery has developed in the last couple of years is kind of an implementation coaching rubric, I guess, not technically a rubric, kind of a follow-up plan for what does it really look like for a school to then follow through with. Now, I went to Math Recovery. Now what do I do with it? What would it actually look like for me teachers to use it? And that's helpful for someone to then be a coach to those people. And it can be as intense or as light as, as the coach and the teacher want it to be. But it's obviously always better when you have someone that is your trainer that also is the follow-up coach. That's generally the what I love it when I can go back and work with a teacher that has sat in the course with me and we've gone through the learning together, because they can ask a question that I know we've talked about it before, and because they're strapped with a million things in their classroom, that they can say, hey, what about that one thing? And I can go, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let's explore that a little bit. I have the gift of time in that regard that they just don't have. So that's been really, really nice.
One of the other questions that we had was about math recovery in the virtual world. So we know that schools were flipped upside down a ton in the last year and a half, 2 years. And so I'll just highlight one thing about the partnership with MySTEM. So as part of our MySTEM work at the beginning of last year, we had some COVID response activities. And because we had that advisory council grant partnership already going, we were able to capitalize on that partnership, that relationship with Math Recovery. And we were able to turn around a project in about 1 month to get some access to resources for teachers across the state of Michigan. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Math Recovery themselves put out some great resources. So if you were already connected to Math Recovery, you could purchase, for example, some virtual PowerPoints that would help you with that virtual instruction. They had 6 instructional PowerPoints as well as a membership that we were able to bundle together. So rather than paying $250 for those 6 instructional templates and the membership fee for a year, we were able to bundle that, and we purchased access for all state of Michigan teachers who were already certified in Math Recovery. That was 3,000 plus teachers across the state. We were able to purchase that through our partnership so that each of those individual 3,000 teachers didn't have to pay $250.
Yeah.
So, Mike, can you share a little bit about what some of those resources looked like?
Sure. And I'll say also, if you're going to check out the mathrecovery.org website, you can create a free account. You obviously don't have access to everything, but they've changed their membership structure a little bit, just like they've changed their pricing structure. So there is some free access to things. Every time you sign up for a course, you get access to the stuff for that course. But there's also stuff that just by having a login, you have access to. So, if you're curious, set up an account in there, use your school email. That's always helpful for them. Then they know you're actually, associated with the school. But then you can do a little exploring in there. There is a folder in there called Math Recovery in Michigan, and there's some cool stuff in there. But so when there was a need for a lot of virtual work last year, one of the things that Math Recovery did was they said, well, we've got all these Math Recovery teachers that have been doing or trying to do these one-on-one, sit-down, face-to-face diagnostic interview assessments. And that means putting materials in front of a student and moving and manipulating them. They can't do that. So they made it basically a virtual version of that, and it looks like a slideshow. So you would set up like your Zoom situation, and you can do the whole assessment interview through Zoom by sharing your screen or whatever. And then they did the same thing with a lot of the instructional resources. So if you're familiar with using 10 frames in your instruction, now they've got virtual instructional resources that are the same type of thing that it's like just a flash 10 frame or whatever, but following the same kind of trajectories that this is from the Course 1 book. The same type of instructional tasks in there, and they've just made them into this digital thing. So whatever way that you would teach virtually, you can do it that way. Obviously, hands-on and face-to-face, we know is going to be better and easier as the teacher, better for the student. But it was a way to take this work and go, we can still do this. So then they also made these bundles of, like I talked about the learning trajectories, and one of them was structuring numbers. Thinking about like how we deal with the relationships and networks of numbers in like dot patterns and finger patterns and things like that. And so one of the things that they made that Diane was talking about was a deck of these virtual resources specifically for that. So what is an activity that we can do that helps kids learn to subbatize small quantities using dot patterns? Well, they made something for that we can use, through a Zoom shared screen or something like that. And then what about like adding small quantities of bingo chips? So there's those kind of things it's all there now. So there's the sign-in area that I was just talking about. There's also before you sign in, there is a resource area that they've just made them available. Certain games like bingo games and spinner games. And then there's also, they did a bunch of work where I think it's mostly their kids, because that's who was at home with them. And they said, hey, we're going to demonstrate how to play this game or do this activity. So it's a couple minutes of that. And then there's the printable, sheet for that. So you can actually watch, oh, that's how you play it, print it out, and you could do that. So they made a ton of stuff available just so that you could, do this work at home, but also so that you could do it virtually through a computer connection as well.
Yeah, so somebody was asking about, do they use Jamboards? And part of what I've seen is that they're using like a PowerPoint or Google slide deck. So then you could share the Google slide deck through Google Classroom with your students and have them be interacting with you, kind of thing. But Jamboards, I definitely agree, would be a great tool for doing some of these activities. I did want to say also that we put in the chat the southwestmystem.org, so swmystem.org/math, and that will take you directly to a link where there's a PDF picture there, and you can click on that and see the table of resources that Mike has kind of been describing from that COVID response project. It was started a year ago in August, so the free downloads kind of have expired, but there's many other resources that are accessible for free, whether you've been math recovery trained or not, just like Mike is talking about right now. And the links to those are right on that website. So feel free to use that. We had another question, Mike, that was about pre-service teachers. So this person said that they work with pre-service teachers and we're wondering, they briefly talk about MTSS. If you were to recommend one key thing that this professor should address with their students, what would that be? And the caveat being that as pre-service teachers, many of them express concern about their own math skills and their own knowledge.
So if it was one, I'm reading this question also while you're saying it, and I'm wondering if it's one recommendation to address regarding MTSS or regarding math instruction. So I think with MTSS, I would say that as I was saying, kind of all the way through this whole thing, the focus is on student thinking, and with multiple tiers of instruction, the idea is figure out where they are and then address it there in order to move them forward. So if there was one key thing you should address with the students,
I'm thinking one thing, I'll give you a little more time to think, but one thing I'm thinking is zooming way out. The research that I've read about formative assessment, just in general, is so powerful about struggling students, specifically students with special needs, come up in that achievement gap, so to speak, that they're rising up quicker. And the students that are already achieving at grade level and beyond, they're also increasing. So when we implement formative assessment strategies, that helps everyone across tier 1, 2, and 3. And so thinking about what's your framework so that you can assess kids formatively. And that to me is the power of math recovery, is introducing any of the learning trajectories. Those frameworks then help you to diagnose where kids are at. So if pre-service teachers would just leave with the understanding that formative assessment is important, then they can learn some of that on the job, like, because sometimes we need to actually be doing to understand why it's so important. But if they could just hear a little bit about some of the research, that formative assessment is really critical. I think that helps you go into your classroom thinking about, how do I actually not just give a test as an assessment, like I have to fill out paper, pencil, but how do I use interactions like interviews or specific intentional questions? And that to me is one of the powerful things that I personally learned through the math recovery courses, is intentionally asking a sequence of questions to diagnose where a student is at. And the part that I like too is that it's asset based. It's what can they do? It's not in the negative saying what can't they do and dwelling in the can't. We want to dwell in the can and build on from there. And I think that that's a subtle but really critical piece of this framework, because sometimes people can see math recovery and they get a little upset. They're like, well, what are you recovering from, right? And to some extent, I wish they hadn't named it math recovery, because recovery does sound kind of negative. But it is important to think about what can kids do and how do we build from there, because the student will feel that success and that will engage and encourage them to keep going too. So anything else you wanted to add on, Mike, from what I said?
Yeah, I have had participants, especially in the AVMR 1 courses, that, one of the first things we talk about is they'll share their experiences as a math student and as a math teacher. And there have been tears from participants that, when they talk about, how difficult it was when they were in 3rd grade or whatever it was. And, it's emotional for some people. And then we get going through the course, and a lot of them will go through this process by really investigating, how is this one particular student thinking through this task of counting these 2 collections of bingo chips, for example. And we walk very, very slowly through, watch what he does with his fingers and watch what he does with his eyes and how he deals with these pieces. And what does that tell you he's thinking about? And they go through this awakening of, that's what I used to do. And they start to realize that, I may not have thought of myself as a math person, but that's maybe because if they're anywhere close to my age, what a math person was 40 years ago isn't what I would consider a math person right now. And so there's a little bit of like, I know in that question, like they wouldn't consider themselves good at math, but or whatever the wording was, but by in this course, focusing on how the students go through that process of working with the tasks, they end up learning something about the math themselves. And that it makes it a little bit okay, like, okay, I don't have to necessarily be an expert in this yet. I'm just focusing on, what is this student doing and what does that tell me? And I can access the mathematics within that part right there. So I think, Diane, you're right on with that, focusing on formative assessment, because it's really, really all about observing the student and trying to make sense of what you're seeing there. If as a college professor or instructor, I would say you could look for an article on the constructivist theory of math instruction, because that's big with all of these researchers that I described earlier, which is all about, how do we help students construct their own knowledge? So constructivist philosophy or theory, that would be a good place to go for, real articles or something.
Yeah, I was going to add on with that. The articles, I think, would be an easy to digest kind of piece for folks in their college coursework, but also thinking about anybody who wants to get started on some of this work. You can purchase the books. Mm-hmm. So Mike, if you could hold up your purple book there, but each of the books that are corresponding to the courses, they're, I think, $40 roughly, something like that. And you can purchase those from their website, but they're pretty accessible. And there's really good research in there. There's examples of instructional practices. There's easy to digest information. It's dense, but a teacher can pick that up. A pre-service teacher could pick that up, and they could start to think about, how does this how do I implement this in my own classroom, in my own interactions with students? And so you don't have to go through the full course. Of course, there's going to be more help than if you go through a four-day course and you can team up with a coach and all of that. That's going to help you to really build a system for your school. But individually, you could study this on your own. And so that is an option, especially if you are like a professor or a leader, getting that knowledge for yourself and to think about where does that fit into your pre-service, curriculum. I think that can be really helpful. I'm not seeing any other questions right yet. So if there's any other questions that folks are thinking about, make sure you share those with us. So I think that might be it. So I am thinking maybe, Mike, you could just share our final slide real quick so that we have the websites again. I think it was one back.
Yeah, let me go back.
So I just wanted to reiterate that if you're interested in connecting with folks, please think about connecting with your MySTEM regional director. You can go to just www.michigan.gov/MySTEM, MISTEM. And all 16 regional directors are there with their email addresses, so you can feel free to connect with them that way. You can also go to that www.mathrecovery.org and send some questions there. And those folks know about the partnership with Michigan, so they can help connect you as well with people that are right in your region, right in your backyard, possibly, that you may not know. I do like also Mike has said earlier, there might be a teacher in your district that's already trained in math recovery. You just didn't even know because they came from another district where they had maybe gotten that training. So it's worth putting an email out to your staff, your colleagues, and see who might have already been connected, or you never know whose friend or spouse or family member has already been connected to that. So there's all different kinds of things out there. So we really appreciate you all giving of your time. And for those of us that might watch this as a recording, we encourage you to reach out as well. And there was just one question about some costs. And so we really do encourage you to talk to Math Recovery because all of those costs have been kind of changing. And then with the partnerships and grants available, it just really depends on your situation. So again, just reach out to those folks. Well, we want to thank you for your time today, and we appreciate everything. We'll see you later.
Thank you, everyone.